On the heels of the successful release of Warcraft 2, Blizzard Entertainment was looking for its next big thing. What was literally thrown out in the design room was, let's do Warcraft, but in space. And although that's where it started, their next project, StarCraft, ended up as anything but. This week, we're going to be celebrating the 25th anniversary of StarCraft by telling you its story. As part of that story, we'll look at a quick history of its development studio, Blizzard Entertainment, and we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about our own experiences with the game. So stick around and prepare yourself for the Zerg rush on yet another trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello, and welcome to the 135th episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week, we'll tell you the story about one topic relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game, a console, a person, a technology, just something relevant to this week. While doing so, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world as its legacy. Today, we're all going to learn about StarCraft, originally released for Windows PCs on March 31st, 1998. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host who, like the Zerg, has to live in his own creep. He's my brother, Rob Casson. Rob, how does that work? Like, getting all your nourishment or just kind of sitting around in all that weird, thick, slimy mess, like, what's that like?
It just takes me back to my college days, Dave.
Anything you'd like to add to that, Keefer?
No, that sounds about right. That's how our entire apartment was.
Gross. Oh, well, that other voice joining us today as a return guest, Keefer Maresh, who last joined us for our episode on Super Smash Brothers and esports. Welcome back, Keefer.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, man. Long time no talk.
Yeah,
It's nice to have you back.
thanks. Yeah. Glad to be here.
And also joining us today, Adam Nelson, who recently dazzled us with his love for Xenogears. We did Xenogears, did we not?
We did Xenogears. We dabbled a little bit in Xenosaga.
Well, you dazzled us with your comprehensive knowledge of Xenogears last month, so welcome back.
Well, thank you. I think we have all veterans here then, huh?
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah, we've
played
all...
the game.
Well, and he meant... he meant...
podcast. I mean,
podcast.
Oh, yeah.
It's a first for me, so I don't know
Oh,
what
the first time? It's the first time I've done a podcast. This week, maybe.
There you go.
Oh.
You knew what I was thinking, Dave.
By the way, I'd just like to throw out there, this is actually my third time on the podcast. Last time I was actually the Phoenix Wright episode.
Fuck, I forgot about the Phoenix Wright. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I only remembered the first one.
That's okay. I probably talked a lot more on the Smash Bros. One.
No, you talked a lot. You did. We did good on the Phoenix Wright episode too. That was a cool episode, and you know a lot about Phoenix Wright. I had man. It's getting to the point, like, because we're 135 episodes in.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. After that point, a lot of them are gonna blend together. I get it.
It just goes to prove David is wrong.
I know. Well, I'm so sorry. Yeah, this is time number 3 for you. You are absolutely right. So, well, I'm glad to have you back. Every time is always a great episode, and we haven't scared you away yet. So, you know.
Or at least I haven't learned my lesson.
Yeah, neither have I.
Yeah,
135 episodes, man. Well, no one starts this going, I'm still going to be going. What is it? I mean, 2.5 years getting up there. So, but
Coming
here we
up on
are.
3.
I know, it's kind of exciting, to be honest with you. This little pandemic project is just a little labor of love for me. So, Keefer, what you been playing these days?
Recently, I started up Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm a bit behind on some of those games because I got PS5 and I didn't have a PS4. So, yeah, I started that up. That's the main one the past couple weeks.
That's fantastic, actually. Adam, that's a great segue, isn't it?
I would say so.
Why? Why is it a great segue?
Oh, I just got home with a PS5 the other day and decided to load up Final Fantasy VII Remake is my first foray into it.
Nice.
Right? What the? It's no wonder we're friends with the two of you. Like, what is this? What are the chances?
We were just having I mean, he literally just told me yesterday he finally got a PS5. That couldn't have been better timing. So,
Which funny story is when Dave invited me to be on this episode.
that's true. I forgot about it until that today was StarCraft until
Oh my
yesterday.
god.
Hey,
To be fair, he at least did tell us in time, so we knew. And even I knew that he was coming on. Apparently, just you forgot to ask him.
Yeah, I mean, I
Most
knew
of-
that you were having another guest when I mentioned that you guys were doing StarCraft to Rob, and I was like, "Hey, I got stuff to talk about that if you want to guest." And he's like, "Yeah, we'll have another one too." So, might as
You're
well.
the only one who forgot, Dave.
I know. I mean, we both know some weeks I hang on to this by a thread, so. But I hang on to it. I haven't lost that thread yet. I mean, the only week we've ever not had an episode was due to a hurricane.
Excuses.
I know, right?
Yeah, it
We've
sounds like a
almost,
skill issue.
it's absolutely true. We've almost done this, almost consistently for 2.5 years. So, woo. Rob, you played anything interesting this week?
Not interesting, no. It's just been Rocket League, RuneScape, and Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2.
That's no Arc.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Arc. I played a little bit of Arc. Compared to the other ones, though, it was like 20 minutes of Arc.
Hey, Rob, we started Raft a couple weeks ago.
That was a couple weeks ago. I
You
talked about it
started
then.
rap with Keefer?
Yeah, I told you that. And I was like, you should come join us. And you're like,
Well, no, what I said is I want to join you because I haven't played through it yet. I just don't remember you telling me it was with Keefer specifically. Now I'm double angry.
well, get triple angry.
I will. All I'm playing is Arc and Factorio, which are 100% time sinks. Although I spent a decent amount of time yesterday trying to convince Adam to either play Satisfactory or Factorio because he was looking for like a min-max type game. I think either of those would be great uses of your time, Adam.
What do they have to do with Mad Max, though?
Min-max logistics.
Oh.
God damn. I can't even.
Can you odd?
Yeah, probably, actually. My whole life is odd, man.
Yeah,
My
they
whole
were-
life.
We're an odd
got-
bunch, so.
I got that one down. Rob, familiarity with StarCraft. You just played it for the first time, right?
That is correct. Today was my first day.
Today was your first
Wow.
day. Right? Right?
How do you
Hey, at
miss
least I
out on a
played it.
cultural touchstone like that?
I've missed out
I'm
on a
s-
lot of them. You shouldn't be surprised anymore, Adam.
No, you shouldn't. I get what did we do? Oh, God of War. Last week we did God of War. He's never played a God of War game.
To be fair, neither
Neither
have
of
I.
you. Oh my
Boom!
god. Oh my god.
Xbox, baby! And Nintendo.
Well, I had a PS2. It's just that was one of the games my mom wouldn't let us have.
Oh, well, that's
PS2
probably
is
fair.
so early on. Like, I can understand it.
That's probably really fair, actually.
And it's hard to dunk on someone when it's a system exclusive, right?
I mean,
Yeah, Dave.
but we had PlayStations and like
Well, we did.
he had a PS2 in the house. He definitely
Yeah, and I
had a
played Grand
PS2.
Theft Auto and Guitar Hero. That's
I was
it.
gonna say you played, yeah. And Rock Band probably. Or Rock
That
Band
was
would've been
Xbox.
That was Xbox.
Yep.
Oh, what else? What was the last one I got surprised by before that? There was another big
There's
one.
so many, man. I don't even know
Very
anymore.
true. Very true. Keefer, how about you, man? Tons of StarCraft in your life?
I wouldn't say tons, but I'm not unfamiliar with it. I probably back in like middle school or so, my older brother introduced me to it, and I used to play it with him and his friends, and we'd like do LAN parties and such. I played through the story of the main one. I don't remember if I actually did the story for Brood War or not. And then I've also played a decent amount of 2, although I've definitely played the original more. And then I revisited in college for a while for a school project, which we can probably bring up later.
Yeah, we can bring that up. Adam, was this ever on our repertoire in college?
I was thinking back on it, and I don't think it ever was.
I don't either. I was having this I know. I mean, you're familiar, obviously. That's why you asked to join today, correct?
Yeah, but for me, it was a middle school, high school thing. It was the novelty of being able to play online with strangers. It was the map editor. I mean, that was StarCraft for me.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I wanna talk about that because I distinctly remember it was a lot of the same stuff for me too. So I was thinking about that because our college years would have been in between the two games.
Yeah, no, I mean, once you figured out how to do a loop the loop in the bomber under the bridge in Battlefield, that was kind of it. We were in.
That was it. Burnout and Battlefield. We were done.
See, I remember the Battlefield LAN parties. That was cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure we came back to the house once though and did like a
Yes.
Command and Conquer land
No,
party, didn't we?
I don't know if I was here for that one. I remember the Battlefield one because I ended up playing upstairs on Dad's computer to join you guys.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Anyway, all right. We podcast haven't really covered anything about Blizzard since our episode on Diablo, I think. So I figured that I'd kind of start out with a brief history of Blizzard Entertainment, the studio that created StarCraft. Silicon and Synapse was founded in February of 1991 by three guys who had recently graduated from UCLA. The silicon was meant to represent the building blocks of a computer, while synapses are the building blocks of the brain. And for the first few years, the company focused mostly on porting games created by other studios. These included games like J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings Volume 1, Battle Chess 2. That was kind of their thing in the beginning. While it existed, Silicon and Synapse ended up developing three of their own games. The first was RPM Racing. It was a remake of the Commodore 64 Racing Destruction set. This was released for the Super Nintendo in November of 91. In May of 1992, they developed a game called Lost Vikings, which was a Viking puzzle platformer for the Super NES. And in June of 93, they kind of created a sequel for RPM Racing. It was called Rock and Roll Racing. Anyone remember any of those games? I
I
don't.
I
remember
mean,
Lost
some of the
Vikings.
names are familiar, but I've not played them.
Yeah.
I know J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings.
Oh, well. Okay. I don't. I'm sure I played them.
I feel like I might have played Lost Vikings at some point.
I did for 5 minutes and it was hard.
Yeah, I remember Lost Vikings because it was kind of everywhere.
Did that get ported to the Game Boy Advance?
Ooh, I don't know. I honestly don't have that in front of me. I don't think so.
I feel like it did.
You might be right. Somewhere about this time, somewhere in 1993, one of the founders of the company decided that he didn't like the name anymore because people were confusing the silicon used in microchips with the silicone that was used in breast implants that were becoming more popular at the time.
Nice.
That totally sounds like a CEO thing to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a name change was in order. And they chose Chaos Studios to replace it, which was meant to represent the haphazardness of their development process. So in early 1994, they were purchased by, of all things, an educational software developer called Davidson and Associates. They had gone public in 1993, and with all the money they raised through the IPO, they were gobbling up smaller studios. Davidson and Associates got their money. They're known for the Blaster series of games, like Math Blaster, for instance. Somewhere around this time, Chaos Studios was contacted by a Florida company, Chaos Technologies, about their name. And Chaos Technologies demanded $100,000 from Chaos Studios in order for them to keep the name Chaos. Chaos Studios didn't want to pay the money, so they changed their name to Ogre Studios in April of 1994. But the executives at Davison absolutely hated the name Ogre Studios, and so they told him, we ain't going to do this. We're going to pick a different name. So the team began running through a dictionary. They were picking out words that they felt sounded interesting, and they passed said words along to the legal department to see if they could legally use them. One of the first words to actually clear legal was the word Blizzard. So in May of 1994, Chaos/Ogre Studios became Blizzard Entertainment. And it was just in time, because for the past couple of years, the team had been working on their next game. You know, a few years earlier in 1992, Westwood Associates had released Dune 2, Building of a Dynasty. Now, if you want to learn all about Dune 2, we did a whole episode on it back in December, episode 118. Go check it out. Dune 2 was an absolutely revolutionary step for the real time strategy genre, and it laid down the groundwork for so many things that we see as commonplace in the real time strategy genre now, like unit control and building like unique factions and stuff like that. Whole bunch of revolutionary things. But then after 1992, there was nothing. There were no notable RTS releases in 93, and going into early 1994, there really wasn't anything either. Now we know now that during this time, Westwood was developing their next title. They developed Dune 2, and they took what they learned about Dune 2 and what they technologically couldn't implement on Dune 2, and they turned that into Command and Conquer. But at the time, no one knew that they were working on Command and Conquer. And if you want to learn about Command and Conquer, we did that in episode 109. Whole bunch of back, like, go check out our old catalog. So Blizzard decided that they were going to work on a project to fill the void in what they felt was an increasingly popular genre. So they took inspiration from Dune 2. They borrowed a thematic idea from The Lost Vikings and Warhammer, guys. They took a thematic idea from The Lost Vikings and Warhammer. They borrowed the idea of automated control from the Lemmings, another game we've covered in a previous episode, and they added a multiplayer element to it all, and that became Warcraft. So for those of you who don't know, because I think WoW is the only way anybody knows the Warcraft universe nowadays, before World of Warcraft, the most popular MMO on the face of the earth, Warcraft was a real-time strategy game series.
Mm-hmm.
And the first Warcraft was released to the world in November of 1994 by Blizzard Entertainment. It was actually one of the early titles that they actually used for Blizzard. Not the first. I think the first was The Death and Return of Superman. They did a licensed title, and then there was one in the middle, I can't remember, and then Warcraft would have been the third Blizzard title ever. Warcraft was a success, and with it, Blizzard was able to secure its finances for the first time, be on stable ground, and really think about what was next. But Warcraft was a success, so almost immediately in February of 1995, they began development on its sequel, Warcraft 2. And Warcraft 2 was kind of another one of those standards for genres. It was even more successful than the first Warcraft. It was released in December of 95, and its release came like a month after the release of Command and Conquer, which came out in September of 1995. So in hindsight, and I just want to touch on this for a moment with Adam, that was a fucking great time to be an RTS fan.
It was. It was a fucking great time to be a video gamer.
I was just thinking Warcraft is not, or StarCraft, the game we're talking about today, is 1998, right?
Mhm.
So 95 gave us Warcraft 2 and Command and Conquer, and then 98 we got StarCraft, and 99 we got Age of Empires. These are like, I don't know, building blocks of the RTS genre, and they all came in like a number of years. That was a great time.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that was the definition of an RTS, right? Were those games, because you have speed and then you have slow, and those are kind of the two categories of RTSs if you really think about it. Like, do you want to take your time or do you want to rush?
It's very true.
And I kind of feel like StarCraft, today's topic, is sort of the one that meets in the middle. Some people are gonna kick my butt, and yell Zerg Rush, but you can play either way, right?
You can play. Yeah.
I feel like it really depends on the level of play in that case.
That is so true. I promise you I'll revisit that. You guys are nailing up something I want to talk about right on the head. Let me get through the history real quick. So 1995, great year to be an RTS gamer. The competition between Command and Conquer and Warcraft 2 kind of set off a war, a real-time strategy war of sorts. So coming off of the successful release of Warcraft 2, Blizzard had to decide what to do next. So during the early development of Warcraft 2, there was a Blizzard programmer named Bob Filch, and he had been assigned to work on a game for the company called Shattered Nations. Now, Shattered Nations was a post-apocalyptic strategy game of warring earthbound nations, is the best way to put it. And as Warcraft 2 began to take shape, he was pulled from that game to go and work on Warcraft 2's AI. And by the time Warcraft 2 had shipped, Shattered Nations had been canceled. But he took some of those ideas and kind of was brought over to the team that was kind of deciding what would come next. And as he put it, the way it was pitched to him was, let's take Warcraft 2 and turn it into a space game. So by this time, the lore had been laid down. They knew that this game was going to feature 3 totally different races, which was a far cry from just about every other RTS at the time. Command and Conquer, Warcraft both have 2 opposing sides. Dune had a couple families, but the units, there wasn't a lot of variety. So yeah, so it had 3 sides. For those of you that don't know, real vague basis into the story of StarCraft, it focuses on the struggle between, at least in the first game here, 3 different species. It's set far away, some far distant Milky Way galaxy part of the Milky Way galaxy during the 26th century. There are 3 different species. There's the Terrans, right? They're descendants from the survivors of a disastrous colonization mission from Earth in 22nd or 23rd century, earlier on in the history. And then there's 2 different genetically engineered species. There's a humanoid, technologically advanced species called the Protoss, and then there's a race of insectoid aliens who basically want to assimilate all the other races called the Zerg. I got that right, didn't I?
Yeah.
Pretty close.
Yeah, that sounds right. And the game is very much a story about how these 3 are at war with one another. But the look and feel, admittedly, of these races changed during the development of the game. At first, Bob Filch just took the Warcraft 2 code and he used it to assemble an early build of StarCraft, which Blizzard revealed to the world at E3 in 1996. And this is called the Early Alpha. Now, in the Early Alpha, the Zerg were called the Nightmarish Invaders.
That's a mouthful.
It doesn't roll off the tongue in the same way. And they drew the most attention. I mean, the Terran was there, the Protoss, basic builds of everything was there. But let's be honest, the Zerg is just so different from everything else at the time. It's a very unique playable race, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so pretty much all the attention was focused on the Zerg. Not too long after E3, they changed the name to the Zerg with a U, but this would have been like just after Toy Story had come out in 95, and of course Toy Story has the Emperor Zerg.
Dude, I want to play as evil Emperor Zerg in an RTS.
I know. So they were forced to change from Zerg with a U. They changed it to Zerg with an E not too long after that. But this build, this E3 build, this early alpha, it got a lot of criticism. It left a lot of people with a really weak impression of the game because it very much looked like Warcraft 2, but with different units. Among some of the comments I could find about the game after this build, it was called Orcs in Space, and someone referred to it as Warcraft Goes Purple. So. But the interest in a new RTS was there because Warcraft 2 was wildly successful, and Blizzard now had a reputation for great RTS games, and so they brought the game back from E3, and they decided to really work on a criticism they received. So a lot more work was put into the design and programming of the game. So now we're on version 2. They work on it, they show that version to the public at the beginning of 97. It no longer resembles Warcraft 2. The Terrans are probably closer to what we know them as today. A lot of work has been done towards the units. And the reception of this version of StarCraft was much, much more positive. But as they kept pushing into development, it really became evident that there wasn't much more that they could do with the tools that they had. So at one point, not too long after the second version was revealed to the public, Bob Filch basically went to the team and he said, look, guys, I've had enough. We can't do what you want to do with the game engine as it is. I need you to give me 2 months and I'll give you the ability to do everything you want and more. And that's what happened. True to his word, he took the game, they gutted it. He spent 2 months rebuilding the entire game from the ground up and gave them a completely new engine. The new engine, they were able to add new units. They got some concepts that we know in the game, like burrowing, for instance. They couldn't do that on the old engine. They were able to balance units better. And so we got a new version of the game in like December of 97, January of 98, like a beta version. That's pretty much the version of StarCraft as we know it. Now, this is audio. there's a lot of art evolution that happens through these three phases. I found a really cool article about it. I'm going to link it to our show notes at www.memorycardlane.com because it's kind of hard to convey. But the stylistically, this game really changed from a Warcraft clone with different skins to its own unique game as it went through all these three phases. Couple other fun facts about the development, and then we can get into the game. Um, Needless to say, StarCraft took a long time to develop for the period that it was developed in. I mean, not by today's standard, but at the time, games were developed with small budgets, and small budgets meant short development times. So the over a year that took to development was not really up to, like, it wasn't normal. So there was a group of fans that coped with it in a very unique way. On the official forums, they started writing a series of fictional stories in which the members of the group attempted to retrieve the latest beta version of StarCraft from Blizzard's headquarters in Irvine, California, and they called themselves Operation Can't Wait Any Longer.
Creative name there.
I know, right? So if you didn't know this, in recognition of their enthusiasm and support for the game, Blizzard later incorporated the group's name, CWAL, as a cheat code in the game.
Huh. Okay.
That's
cool.
that's where that one originates from. Also, last thing about it, prior to this, Blizzard Entertainment didn't have a film department. They actually created a film department during the development of StarCraft for the sole purpose of working on the CGI cutscenes that Blizzard has become really well known for in all of their games. So that was another benefit to StarCraft. Their film department was this was the first game that those cutscenes came out of a dedicated film department. All in all, the team worked together. Like I said, they released StarCraft to the world on March 31st, 1998. July of 98, it got its first expansion called Insurrection. A few months later, it got a second expansion called Retribution. Both of these weren't really full expansions. They were like maps, hero units, single campaigns. But then in December of 98, it got a legitimate, like, full-fledged expansion called The Brood War, which was very well received. Major revamp of the game. We'll talk about it, but, new campaigns, maps, music, new units, new upgrades. That's how we got here.
So I just want to throw one thing out there for you, Dave.
Hit me with it.
Because I thought it was funny because you mentioned the Operation Seawall cheat code, right?
Mm-hmm.
And its effect on the game is it makes things build faster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very true. It makes it's true. It's a nice little homage to the fans who were in it the whole time,
Absolutely.
So yeah, so that's the history. Let's all chime in. Let's talk about StarCraft. All right, Rob, who'd you play as?
I was just doing the campaign, so
So Terrans.
The Terrans, absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't have the other two unlocks, only the Terrans.
Okay, all right. So Rob would have only tried Terran. Keefer, what's your preference?
I usually play Zerg, to be honest,
Of course.
but I also often played the Protoss because when Brood War came out, the whole Dark Archon thing, making it so you could play all three races at once, was my brothers and I kind of took advantage of that a lot.
Nice.
We would rush the Dark Archon, then just send him by himself into the enemy base to steal a worker.
That's fantastic. Adam, what was your preference?
By the when I really was into it, I probably played Terran most of all, and that mostly because I enjoyed the voice acting for the Terrans the most.
Yeah, I was probably a Terran too. I tend to gravitate towards character designs that are familiar to me because I'm boring. So the fact that the Terrans were human is probably it. You know what? I can tell you I played a lot of Protoss though because construct additional pylons is so drilled into my head. Like I can still hear it right now. So
Oh, you want to know the line that's drilled into my head?
What's that?
Other than you want a piece of me, boy, obviously.
Yep.
There's also need a light.
Yep. I never could get good at Zerg. I never could get Zerg. So let's talk about the three races. We've already kind of brought up what was so unique about StarCraft was that it had three very unique races that all played very differently. Let's take base construction for instance, right? So what's unique about the Terran and base construction is the buildings can fly, which I always thought was super cool. Am I missing something? That was really the catch to them, wasn't it?
Oh,
Yeah, they could
absolutely.
do that, and the Terrans generally were long range units.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, like
Yeah,
artillery.
thinking about this episode in the 24 hours notice that I had of it, I kind of thought about like where we are in current gaming and looking back at the origins of it, and I
Uh-huh.
kind of see like the Terrans as the support class, the Protoss as the tank, and the Zerg as the DPS.
It's you're not a that's probably not, I don't know. Do you think the Protoss are the more tankier than the Terrans?
Well, they have the shields.
Oh, that is true. They do have the
everything they
shields.
everything they build has shields. But you kind of turtle up as Protoss, right? You sort of like build your little base and then
Oh
sit back until
yeah,
you got like a carrier or something like that, or Dragoon Rush or something.
Yeah. Yeah, well, for base construction, the Protoss, they warp their buildings into existence, but they have to do it in range of a pylon.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So you're limited by there.
But at the same time, the Protoss have the turrets that can attack both ground and air units.
They
Yep,
do. They
that are
do.
cheap.
I was literally just right before we got into this, I was playing StarCraft and I was actually playing the first Protoss. I played the first level in each campaign leading up to
Mm-hmm.
this, and that's exactly how I had to get through the Protoss campaign because I'm lame and don't remember how to play. But I literally just creeped my pylons and my proton cannons up on encroaching on the Zerg base in that first mission until I uh, had them
Hmm.
where I needed them. So, and then the Zerg are to me the most fascinating the way they play because you have to play them on the creep and you don't build buildings. Your workers actually transform and mutate into the buildings.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
that is such a novel concept.
That's actually one of the reasons that I really liked the Zerg, because not only did your units actually transform, but like as the game went on, you had to adjust your playstyle because certain units were better at certain points of the game. Like there's the Zerg Rush, which only
Yes,
works in the first like 5 to 10 minutes of the game
Mm-hmm.
that's
because
so
the
true.
Zerglings are just way too weak after that.
Going into that multiplayer, the first version of this game, this is back in the era when we had spawned installations. You could actually play up to 8 people using one disc in the very first version of StarCraft. Now, once BattleNet became a thing on like when they re-released it in the Battle Chest, um are the what 99 we got a re-release of it and it was the BattleNet edition. That's exactly what it was. It was StarCraft the BattleNet edition. Once they re-released it with the BattleNet edition, you couldn't do the spawn installation for. But I was thinking about this because Command and Conquer was the same thing. These early RTSs you could play multiple players off one disc. Now, spawned installs couldn't play single player. They couldn't create multiplayer games. They couldn't use the campaign editor. So they were really just good for connecting to the multiplayer game. But that's cool that you could play up to 8 people on one install. I kind of dig that.
It sort
That's
of
how
catered to the LAN culture of the time, right?
it did
Hmm.
definitely cater to land culture. This is the first, and not as much this one as StarCraft 2, but I will tell you, like, I remember distinctly that StarCraft is the first time I was ever introduced to the concept of KPM and the need of being fast in an RTS. And the Zerg Rush is the reason, to be honest
Mm-hmm.
with you. Once the Zerg Rush became a thing, you had to defend again. Like, you had to. You had to be fast. That was just it. You
Hmm.
had to be fast.
Yep. Well, it made the first 5 minutes of any multiplayer match sort of rote, right? You always did the same thing no matter which faction you were.
It's true. Yeah, because you always knew if you were up. You always knew. You always knew.
You assumed
So
there was a Zerg on the map, and you assumed that they were going to try a Zerg rush.
yeah.
Yeah, because if someone's not preparing for that, it's an easy win.
Exactly.
Did Keefer, you asked before we recorded about the Brood War. Did you play prior to that, or did you kind of get into it at the Battle Chest, like everything together time
Uh,
period?
it's when the battle chest came out because my older brother got it at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah. So you don't remember vanilla.
No, not really.
I don't remember vanilla. That's okay. That Brood War was Brood War was literally a game changer for this. It was one of those expansions that probably exceeded the original in a lot of ways because what it added and what it balanced was fantastic, and in no way took away. It was just Brood War was absolutely great. I played too much of this, to be honest with you.
Can I just like throw out another topic and
Yeah, hit me
the
with
fact
it.
that like in the a world where we had like Command and Conquer's super campy, cheesy cutscenes, you know, and Warcraft like not very far behind in terms of camp, just in a fantasy setting.
It was so
StarCraft
cheesy.
told a good freaking story.
They did. You know, I was just thinking about that. I'm glad that's a great segue. You're fantastic. Um, they don't do this anymore. Like I was and I was thinking about the RTS genre. You know, you said you were kind of thinking about now to then, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't make them like this anymore. Like single player let's talk about single player campaign. This has a fantastic, like you said, fantastic story, fantastic campaign. They come out with RTSs that don't even have single player campaigns anymore. Like
Sure.
it's a forethought. You know, they don't do it. Nobody does it. This has a great story, and the world building is fantastic.
Well, the fact that they took this sprawling, you know, space opera epic that could have gotten lost under its own weight, and they managed to focus the emotional core of the story down to a love and revenge story, and that was
Yeah,
able to span from the very what the third mission of the Tyrion campaign all the way through Brood War.
Hmm.
yeah,
I thought
yeah.
that's really impressive.
And then further,
I don't remember anything about StarCraft 2's story.
I never got anything past Wings of Liberty, so I can't say much beyond that.
Yeah.
you know just I mean not just what's great about StarCraft 2, and not that I'm gonna get into it too much. Each of those expansions like focused on a different one of the different classes, right? And it was fantastic the way they did it. Absolutely fantastic the way they did it. So, um, I really like that. Kiefer, what do you remember about StarCraft? Like you said, you played it with your brother all the time.
Yeah, like I mentioned, most of the time when I played it, it was with my oldest brother because every few weeks he would have like 4 to 5 people over, and we would just have a LAN party in our basement essentially. Um, and we'd do just regular game modes. We'd do custom maps. Some of the custom maps in that game were really fun. Like they had arena game modes where like you spend your resources on a specific unit and you like have to survive, you know, a wave of enemies or whatever. And yeah, some of those they had like tower defense modes too, and those were
Mm-hmm.
cool. And
Sure did.
yeah, really just the custom game modes from both StarCraft 1 and 2 really were probably my favorite parts of those games.
They had like with the map editor. I remember like people could turn like there was a racing mode where people would
Hmm.
turn it into like just like literally a racing game.
Mm-hmm. Vultures racing against each other.
Yep,
Hmm.
vultures racing against one another. I'm pretty sure there was literally one that was just football. People had turned units into football players, and you could just play football. There was just
And people would come up with such like deep campaigns too in the map editor. You remember
yeah, I
downloading those
do.
map packs that were like 10 mission campaigns?
Yeah. I do. And but let's what else like what where else did that creativity go at the time? Like we didn't have campaign editors. This is
Well,
probably one of the earliest RTSs that had something like that. And this was just the time when the modding community was just kind of birthing
mm-hmm.
itself. Like Doom and Duke Nukem may have been some of the earliest games that allowed you to mod them, and that would have been 95, 96, and we're just a few years later here. So this is the very beginning of the era in which people can create content for their own video games.
Hmm.
Yeah, and we're not
Um,
even talking like modding. You know, you
no,
talk about modding, you're talking about coding and, you know, breaking down the game and building it back up again in a slightly different way. I mean, this was a tool set that Blizzard put out there for the specific purpose of getting community generated content.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an amazing set of tools. It was
Yeah, and
accessible and powerful.
that's actually a decent segue into one of the things I wanted to talk about. I actually utilized some of those tools while I was in college for
Oh yeah, tell me about that.
yeah, so my second to last semester I was in an AI course. For the final project, I actually made an AI for StarCraft. It was difficult to say the least. And honestly, it was a pretty unrefined AI. It was for the Terran specifically. I didn't get to the point where it would work for all the races, but it was utilized the Blizzard tools for coding, and it was like translated into Java, and you had to run it with the game. Like you had to launch them at the same time, or else the AI tool broke, which was kind of annoying. But that project, I probably worked on it for 2 or 3 weeks, just sitting in my room by myself. Rob might remember this because I would come up for like 5 minutes and then just disappear into my room again.
You know, now that you mention it, you are right. That is the first look into StarCraft that I had because I had no idea what the game was, but I do remember watching you do this and run the program, and I was just like, dude, I do programs that are like 10 lines long and it's complex. What the hell are you doing with your life?
Yeah, that project actually, I was not able to get it to work to endgame until literally the night before the project was due. It would always get to the point where it would drive the built-in StarCraft AI back to their base and then would not destroy their buildings.
You know, one of the biggest criticisms about StarCraft is its pathfinding and AI.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you created an AI cat. It likes to toy with its prey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the main thing about this AI is that unlike the built-in AI, it doesn't just know where players are. So I had to have some logic in there to like send a worker unit out to all of the possible spawn points to find out where the enemy was. And it would like have to save that information into the AI and use that for the fighting, and would have to go search for more if they built a secondary base, and it was a lot. I'll say that.
Did you know that the annual conference on AI and interactive digital entertainment, that they used to host a yearly competition for people to build AIs playing StarCraft?
Yes, I did. This was actually part of, well, it was using the tools that were provided to that competition. But
Gotcha.
when I built it, it was out of season, and by the time it came back around, I was out of college.
Well, I mean, it took them forever to build an AI that would actually beat people in StarCraft, and then I mean nowadays it's nothing. You know,
Hmm.
I think in the StarCraft 2 era, Deep Blue was the thing, and I mean it smashed professional StarCraft 2 players. But yeah, it's really funny that you bring that up because because that was a thing. They used to do it. They used to do it. I don't know what happened because I was only able to find tracking till about 2015, 2016. And up to that point, they weren't able to build an AI by that point that had beat StarCraft. And that blows my mind to think of, like, since Chat GPT is so forefront of technological conversations right now, how far we've come from 2016 till 6-7 years later. Now
Hmm.
we have now you have an AI that could probably write a basic AI.
Yeah.
That,
just
you,
just
know,
trivialize my 3 weeks worth of work in about 5 minutes. Yeah, I know.
Adam, what about you? What do you remember about StarCraft? Like,
Oh, I mean, the thing that stays with me all these years later is the storytelling in it. You know, and I kind of brought it up a little bit earlier how they were able to refine everything into a love and revenge story, um, and somehow able to keep that going across all three factions, across multiple games and expansions.
across the whole universe.
Right. I mean, you can have a sprawling universe, and Star Wars does this. with the Skywalkers and everything. You can have a sprawling universe full of a huge menagerie of characters, but as long as it has a heart, and StarCraft did that with Raynor, Kerrigan, and Mengsk.
And that story goes right into StarCraft 2. I mean, StarCraft 2 is, I mean, Kerrigan is StarCraft 2. Like
Mhm.
it carries so far into that. And I mean, just while we're on the topic, this universe has like 12 novelizations, and it carries into that too. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
Wait,
you're not.
really?
Yeah, there's 12 novels in the StarCraft universe,
I
and
actually didn't know that.
two graphic novels.
And an
And
infinity of fan fiction.
an infinity of fan fiction and a board game, in case you were wondering. Um and that thematic core is it's the whole thing, and it's really fascinating that has stuck the whole time. I just think they've managed to hire some really great storytellers and have kept that the whole time. But I was thinking that the whole time I was playing this, like, they just don't, the story, you're right, they don't do this like they used to. Also, let's be honest, real-time strategy as a genre has evolved. Like, the standard RTS is not nearly as popular nowadays as like the four-time strategy games are. And four-time strategy, like the world building, like the concept of world building is playing a four-time strategy. It's in these games you're as part of the world, and a four-time strategy you build the world, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to compare like a StarCraft with a Civilization game.
or Stellaris, which is the big one, I think, a big one now. So, um
Isn't that FCA? Just kidding. That's Stellantis.
eh.
Bad joke.
I just don't think they make, like, I was, and I know you already said it, Adam, but I don't think that there is really, like, I really enjoyed going back to play this. Like,
Mm.
I genuinely enjoyed going back to play this because, like, I sat down, I played a little bit of Terran, I played a little bit of Protoss, played a little bit of Zerg, I played all three, and, like, I really appreciate this for what it is. Like, it's really three unique factions. Like, they're great, they're fun to play, they're all
Hmm.
very different. I really like this. I don't think there's a comparable one right now, other than I mean, StarCraft 2 is still a thing. So,
Well, and I think we have this very short window in gaming history from like maybe 95 to 99, where technology is evolving to the point you mentioned that StarCraft was Blizzard's first time handling all the video production in house,
yeah.
and they did a fantastic job, and you've got Final Fantasy 7 and 8 in that series. You've got Xenogears in there. You've got all of these very powerful narrative games, and I think they work here because the technology has gotten to the point where they can tell the major story beats in these beautiful pre-rendered scenes, but the pixel graphics are still a little janky enough and a little low res enough that the player can easily project themselves onto the sprites. And I think it's just like this really cool spot where we've got a renaissance of storytelling, and it was only for a short time. Now we get into more photoreal stuff, and you just can't do it unless you've got a bang on story.
It's almost like it's more genuine as to the feelings of the game makers creating these games out of a passion rather than, making it because they work for a company and that company needs to make money.
Oh yeah.
I can absolutely
Oh
feel that.
yeah. 100%. That yeah. This was still an. I mean, I'm not going to take away from the large teams of people who make games
Oh,
nowadays.
of course not.
It's an art in a different reason, but, like, this was art here. Like,
Yeah.
people that were making these games were trailblazers. One beautiful part about our industry nowadays is its accessibility, right? I told you, I like to do video game development as a hobby. It's so easy for me to download an engine and find documentation and anything like that. And, Rob and I sit here week after week and we talk about video game history. And so many of these stories are like, the people didn't have anything. Like, they invented the tools as they went
Mm-hmm.
along. And there's a whole different way to approach it when you're the one literally, literally setting the path for everyone else.
I feel like now that you mentioned that again, that you do the game development
Mhm.
a little bit on the side, some of that feeling of the genuine feeling of making it out of love and passion, you can still get that nowadays a lot of
Mhm.
times through indie games.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. You know, like really famous one recently, Stardew Valley is like the indie darling. One guy
Mhm.
created it, completely a project of passion, and one of the most popular games. I mean, literally one of the most popular games. Terraria was the same way, project of passion. Now it's
Mhm.
one of the like top 10 selling games of all time, believe it or not.
Minecraft was the same way.
Yep.
Yeah, one guy in the
Oh,
beginning before he
yeah.
sold it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it grew big once he sold it, but it started
Oh,
out as Notch.
and
Now the best-selling game of all time, 238 million copies. You want to know why I know that? Because I looked up the top 10 list earlier today. So don't judge.
well,
So
you can find just an amazing variety of top tier indie games nowadays on
I
Steam or
know,
wherever you get your games, and you know,
I know. Aren't you in all of that? Like I think about from here, like StarCraft here to where we are now, and like vanilla StarCraft was before everything, right?
uh-huh.
98 would have been Half-Life, so we would have been like pre-Valve, pre-Battle.net.
Hmm.
The first game I remember playing online against other people by dial-up was Age of Empires, which was 1999. That was like the first competitive online gaming I ever remember really genuinely doing. It's so hard to explain to people like that don't have context, but like my god, have we come so far in.
And the industry is democratized in some ways, and of course gone the other way
Yeah.
in other respects. But I have absolutely no scientific or polling data to back up this next statement. But I would wonder how many of these indie developers, if you ask them, would say, "Oh yeah, a game like StarCraft is absolutely where I develop my passion for creating gaming content."
There's a lot of, I mean, I'm sure when you dive back into some of the histories, you can find some of that. We talked about the Stanley Parable, which was a Half-Life mod at first,
Mm-hmm.
born from the same passion. Yeah, there's plenty of that throughout these stories. You are
Yeah,
absolutely right.
just these really fantastic projects that then plant the seeds for all these amazing derivative projects. You know,
Hmm.
and whether that's from through modding or through level editors or anything like that. It's a really good way to pay it forward, I feel.
Yeah, well, and we're in that period where so many of these games, I'm gonna be honest, I still think StarCraft is like the golden standard for RTS games. And StarCraft 2, in my opinion, improved on the formula, but I still think that this right here is, and maybe not where we started. We started with Dune 2, and I think Command and Conquer like really refined the formula to be more of the modern. Dune 2 started it, Command and Conquer kind of knocked it out. But I really think like first Warcraft and then specifically StarCraft. I think this was when like this is it for me.
Yeah.
Even to this day. So
I think StarCraft found the formula that resonated with people. Um, I mean, Command and Conquer had a great thing going, and through Red Alert, it was awesome. And then they just kind of started changing. They experimented, which is great, but I think they sort of lost what made the originals great. And then by Command and Conquer 4, you didn't actually have bases anymore.
yeah, I agree. That series went down. But
And Blizzard was smart enough to know that this is what makes this special. This is what makes this so compelling to people. Whether it's a casual gamer, a creator, or an esports professional. There's a few things that really make these kind of games classics.
this was also, speaking of esports, this was the first game I remember seeing played competitively. This is the first game I remember hearing any association with the term esport.
Wasn't that
Um,
because Blizzard created the industry around this game?
they
Essentially.
I mean, they did start leagues up around it, yes. And then it just got big. Yeah, Keeper, you ever dabbled in StarCraft, any of the competitive, or know anyone who did competitive on the StarCraft circuits?
I can't say I do. Like I said, I never really got into the competitive side of this.
Right.
I barely even used BattleNet aside from just playing custom maps with people.
Mhm.
It, I mean, it did okay as an esport here. For whatever reason, it became incredibly popular in South Korea, so much so that they eventually declared it the country's national esport. There are 3 television channels to this day that are dedicated to the professional gaming scene in South Korea. Among the games they play, StarCraft and StarCraft 2 both have professional leagues. The Global StarCraft League is StarCraft 2, and the Africa TV StarCraft League is StarCraft 1. And then there's a collegiate Star League. Over 100 North American universities, initially StarCraft, but now StarCraft 2, have a competitive gaming team dedicated to playing in the collegiate Star League for StarCraft. I ain't gonna lie. Even though this is the first game that I remember being associated with esport, I was never into it back then. I just I remember that like the first time I heard that people could play games for money and those sums of money got big. Like I think at one point, I mean I know it's not Dota money like the millions that we got at that point, but I remember at one point someone won $200,000 playing StarCraft, and I was like, holy shit! Like that's a lot of money, and this was it, and then I remember watching the pros play and trying to learn stuff, and then keyboard clicks per minute. Oh, that's another point. This was one of the first ones that had hotkeys. I don't remember an
Oh
RTS
yeah.
before this that had hotkeys, and playing with hotkeys, because we're talking about the Zerg rush. Hotkeys became, you had to learn how to
Critical.
play with hotkeys,
Yeah.
100% critical. And yeah, this is a lot of fun to revisit. Like I said, I think that this for me is still like the golden standard of RTS games. It's probably my favorite of all time, and Age of Empires comes real close, honestly, because I like history.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say a lot of people would make an argument for Age of Empires 2 over
I
this,
know.
but
Mhm.
I still got to get Rob to play an Age of Empires game. I love those games. So, and Age of Empires was the first, like I said, the first game I remember playing competitively against other people, because Microsoft had a gaming network back then, a dial-up gaming network, and you could log on, and you had an MMR, like you had a rating, and they had ladder tournaments, and yeah. So, a couple of fun facts about this: StarCraft has been to space. In the shuttle STS-96 mission in 1999, it was taken up in the space shuttle. So it's been a copy of this game has been to space. The UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, once offered an academic course on theory and strategy, and they used StarCraft to teach said course.
well, that's cool.
Along the same lines, the United States Air Force's Air and Space Basic Course once used StarCraft to teach newly active officers about crisis planning under stress, which
Huh.
I really like. I really, really like. In 2021, the Strong National Museum of Play, which if you don't know what that is, I have a whole episode on it scheduled in July. It inducted StarCraft into its World Video Game Hall of Fame. The Strong Museum is where the World Video Game Hall of Fame is. So there's only a handful of games in the World Video Game Hall of Fame. I think it's less than 10 still, and this is one of them. I'm probably way off of the number, maybe 10 a year. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. And StarCraft was recently in the news culturally. Any of you remember when it was talked about recently?
I don't
Anyone?
think I saw it.
It was
I don't.
someone used the term Zerg Rush during a very recent world event.
It was the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
100%.
Okay.
Early on in the Ukrainian war, the Ukrainian chief of staff referred to a potential Russian offensive as a potential Zerg Rush. And
Wow.
then he proceeded to explain what it was and explain himself in the same context, but it brought back all these memories because I was like, oh my, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like, not cool. The war is not cool, but the
Right.
reference was cool. So we got StarCraft 2 in 2010. You guys, not that this is StarCraft 2 episode, but did you dabble in StarCraft 2 at all?
I did. Again, mainly in the custom game modes because those were more expansive than in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I got into Mafia in the first place, actually. Or Werewolf, if people are
Werewolf,
more
yeah.
familiar with that version.
As a side note, if you're looking for anywhere else to join us, later in the year I'm doing an Among Us episode, and it's going to include Mafia, and Werewolf because it's very much about that genre, not just about Among Us. So
You better have like 8 to 12 people in that one.
Oh man.
Are they going to
um,
get killed off during the episode?
that would be hilarious if we could find a way to make that work.
Just start muting people as the
Right,
stream goes
right,
on.
right. Yep. Adam, did you dabble in StarCraft 2?
Yeah, I played Wings of Liberty, but to be completely honest, it didn't grab me, so I couldn't
Yeah.
tell you much about it.
Well, it was also it came out in 2010. It's also a period in which a lot like it's so hard to focus on a game anymore, just because now they just get released every which way. So that's kind of the point.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, Keefer here is starting Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think he'll be talking about that pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So StarCraft 2 we got in 2010, and it has 3 expansions, which are fantastic. Each one focused on one of the 3 factions. The first one was Terran, and then we got a Protoss expansion, and then we got a Zerg expansion.
But you talk about how the industry's changed. StarCraft 2 being released across 3 different games is basically the same amount of content that they released in Brood War.
True. Yeah, that's true.
Obviously, it looked better. It was more polished, but man, those glory days when you had access to like unlimited StarCraft content was great.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about Insurrection and Rebellion, which were like just map packs, but there were so many like unauthorized map packs that you could find, and
Mhm.
and game modes and downloads and stuff like that. Yeah, it was great. Mostly for me, these like Warcraft and StarCraft, I played mostly single player. I don't think this was a big multiplayer game for me. Now, StarCraft 2 became a big multiplayer game for me. I tried to be competitive in StarCraft 2. My fingers don't go fast enough. Um, my fingers don't go fast enough. And then I remember too, along the same vein, I remember for a long time people were super excited because they were working on a game called StarCraft Ghost. Either of you remember
Yep.
StarCraft
Oh, yeah.
Ghost?
I was psyched for StarCraft Ghost.
It was supposed to be a stealth, like a tactical stealth game, like a third
It's
person
gonna be
stealth game.
amazing.
Yeah, set in the
Oh,
StarCraft universe.
that sounds familiar now.
You were gonna play as a ghost. It was gonna be like
Yeah.
Siphon Filter or
Yeah, it was
something
gonna be,
like
yeah,
that.
literally it was
Or
gonna be
GoldenEye.
Siphon Filter. Yeah, set in the StarCraft universe, and like they teased it, we got bits and pieces of it, and then it just got canceled in 2014.
Yeah.
So
There was like a full motion video with a demo attached to it at one
Mhm.
point, I think, wasn't there?
yeah, they got pretty far into it, and I
Yeah.
think I don't remember what knocked it out. Maybe Diablo 3. I don't know what knocked it out, but they canceled it in the middle of 2014.
They might have, and this was a point I was thinking about earlier when we were talking about esports. I mean, Blizzard truly has pivoted to be that publisher of competitive games, right?
Well, that's become the focus for this whole series. Rob was able to play this game because, they remastered StarCraft, and the remaster is
Mhm.
fantastic. It's got modern graphics, but they didn't change the gameplay in any way, shape, or form. It's just a perfect recreation. In fact, all the competitive gaming leagues switched over to remaster because there was no reason not to. The
Right.
graphics
It
don't
looks better.
change. Yeah, the graphics didn't change the way they play at all. But the original version is now free to play for both StarCraft and StarCraft 2. You can play Wings of Liberty for free in StarCraft 2 on Blizzard Net too. They're both free to play. They pivoted to a free to play competitive model that's supported by their competitive gaming and typical monetization like cosmetics and stuff like that. So Rob, if you like StarCraft 2 is honestly, I like StarCraft 2. I don't know how the rest of you feel about it, but I like it.
Well, let
So
him play through the campaign in the first one first.
he'll never play through the campaign. He'll never play through the campaign. But I
But the campaign is
StarCraft 2,
what'll get you.
StarCraft 2 for me was more of the same but better because it was modern, faster, fluid, and better looking. I liked StarCraft 2 a whole lot.
No, I'm with Adam. I feel like something about it just wasn't quite the same, and it didn't grab me as well.
It
No,
didn't have
but
the heart, right?
yeah, but so I guess because we started focusing on different things, right? You're right. The story on the first one is way better, but because I was playing it more competitively, I feel it's a better competitive game because
That's
it's faster and
that's
fluid.
fair. That's
So
So,
what
very
make
fair.
so like what makes a better game? Because by
well,
that
that's
standard, like Overwatch is game of the year,
you're
right?
100% correct about this, and we kind of talk about this a lot on here. Is that like the focus of the whole industry has changed? Like and not really changed but divested, because you definitely have games, and you already said it, that fall into two camps, right? You
Mhm.
have really cinematic, like great storytelling games, and then you have the Call of Duties of the world, which don't even bother to do any premise whatsoever, like go in, shoot things, get abused by a 12-year-old. um but Rob loves that. That's his favorite thing to do week in and week out. Am I right, Rob? You still
I don't know
alive
what you're
there?
talking about. I have no idea what
I
you're
mean,
talking about there, Dave.
he's the 12-year-old abusing people through
There
voice.
you
With his voice changer. He 100% puts the voice changer on and does it. So,
Oh, damn, you found me out.
go.
I make fun of Rob, but realistically, he's been playing RuneScape for like 30 years, like longer than he's been alive. So, I mean,
And the game.
and the game, he's got his thing and he's just sticking to it.
I mean, it's admirable.
I know it's great.
I
Honestly,
find it hard to stick with a game nowadays.
I'm the same way. Man, I am the same way. My little bit of time, I get so ADHD about video games. I can't focus. It's so hard. It's so hard.
Hmm.
So, anyway, that's StarCraft, guys. Yay.
Yay.
It was a great game. It changed the world.
It did. It definitely changed the world, and like I said, I think for me it's still the golden standard for RTS games. So, Um, if you're interested, like I had mentioned before, there are 12 novels in the universe, like 12 novels, and they turn one into an anthology, like part of it into an anthology. There's been a few short stories written, two graphic novels, a board game, action figures. There's a whole merchandise line around StarCraft. Um, Probably
Dave,
easy to find.
I want to
Yeah.
add one more historical bit to this. As you were
Yeah.
mentioning some of the contemporaneous games that came out around when StarCraft was released,
hmm
forgot about Total Annihilation was 97.
I did. Total
And that was a big
Annihilation.
one.
Total Annihilation was great, but it didn't really catch me until Supreme Commander, which I think was what, 99 or 2000 was
No,
when was
Supreme Commander was much later,
yeah, it was much later.
but it was the
So
scale.
it was. It took RTS and took the scale of it to a whole different. That was Chris Taylor.
Yeah, Chris Taylor.
Yeah, Chris Taylor did that one. You're right. It was a beautiful time for RTS games. It was a beautiful time for gaming, period.
Oh, absolutely.
The mid to late 90s was just an era of innovation, the likes of which I know I've said this before and I feel old when I say it. I don't think we'll ever have it that way again.
I feel like it's very difficult to recapture that because for a lot of games, that's the transition from 2D to 3D. And
Mhm.
you
Right.
can't recreate that really aside from the jump to VR, which has kind of been a bit of a flop.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. But am I like, maybe I'm in the minority here, but I kind of feel like we're in the middle of one of those renaissance right now, almost in the step back from 3D back to 2D, mostly driven by the indie community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so my whole argument though is like I sometimes feel bad because like current gaming generations will never experience it the way we experienced it. Like just take the beginning for us, Adam, from like late 80s 1990 NES into here into literally 1999 2000. think about how much change there was in that decade.
Yeah.
I don't know if there will ever be, like, where do we go from here? Like, fidelity wise, because you just brought up VR and 3D. Where do we go from here to, like, to change things? Like, what's going to be the next thing? I've
The
asked
next
that before. I don't know. What's going to be the next thing? I don't have the answer to that.
I feel like the next thing has to be VR expanding and becoming more accessible, really.
Yeah, but
It's
I
not the
Full
don't.
dive.
same, but at the same time, it's like,
You got to go full dive.
Or
yeah,
do you look,
yeah.
But you look at like AAA's first foray into roguelites with Returnal. You
yeah.
know, there's a game that should theoretically have tons of replayability, but with all the amazing graphics of a AAA budget.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of studios doing stuff like that. I don't know. And look, I'm a big VR fan. I love, I've got my Quest headset. I love VR. It's real hit or miss. It feels like indie PC gaming in the very beginning of every store when there's just all this trashware, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And there's no in between, right? You either have these like $1 like games that were made in 10, like literally like someone made them, but someone who knew what they were doing could do it in a day and do it better, or you have these really big great titles that took entire teams, but because of the way VR's developed, you're paying 30-40 bucks for a 1 hour experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of comes down to the barrier of entry to VR, which admittedly is much lower than it was 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But AAA studios are not willing to put in the effort to make large experiences for VR because there's just not the install base for it.
You're
Mm-mm.
right. Yeah, you're right.
Hey, Dave, are
But
we recording a bonus episode right now?
yeah, I know, right? I know. I know.
But no, it's a
Anyway,
fascinating thing. Like, right, where are the trends in gaming going now? We've all been around long enough to see what happened in the 90s and the 2000s and the
well,
rise of Call of Duty and all that.
we got the 90s, they got the 2000s, so
We were playing games in the 2000s.
no, well, I mean, like
I wasn't
they
gonna say it, Adam.
I know what you mean, but like they didn't get to experience the 90s was the point. They were still
Hey,
drinking from the bottle.
I look back
Hey,
fondly on the '90s.
hey, I my first console was a Super Nintendo, but
Relatable.
Yeah.
Actually, the original Nintendo. Technically, we had one of those.
well, yeah. I
Yeah,
also
but
have a ColecoVision sitting back
yeah,
home.
same. Right. Yeah, but and it was not a slight, but how old were y'all when this came out? 98.
4.
Yeah,
Three.
see? That's
Yep.
that's what I mean. I mean, Adam and I are NES era. Like, I mean, I don't Sega,
Sega for life.
you were Sega. Okay. I was, and I've talked about before that Super Nintendo is my nostalgic era. Like that's when I found my stride in gaming, which would have been the
Mhm.
early 90s. Um, you know, but we had the older stuff. I remember our dad bringing home a tabletop Pong table from a garage sale once. And we had Commodore, and I have an Intellivision, a ColecoVision. I have an Odyssey 2 in my closet right now. We
Oh,
had an
okay.
opportunity to play a lot of the old stuff, but for me, SNES was kind of my stride, so that I remember. But the point is like
Hey, I got a
Robin.
question for you, Dave.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, what's the game that if you had access to the technology but you don't, you wish you could play again?
Oh God, I don't even know how to answer that on a whim.
Like, because some of these games are almost lost to history at this point, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of them are. I have a whole binder of early Windows CDs, like DOS CDs, that I'm sure if I put not even. I don't have a CD-ROM drive on my computer anymore.
Yeah.
Like I was gonna say, get a DOS box and install them, but I have a whole more binder. In case you don't know, once upon a time we had CDs and we
Yeah.
stored them in binders.
Hey, I still use CDs in my car.
CDs
Back in the
nuts.
day, they came on disc. There were these little square things. They came in 3.5 inches and
Oh
5
my
1/4.
god. I know. It's so
I-
bad.
I still have all my floppy disks for Lord of the Realms 2 in my parents' basement.
Oh, that was a good
Nice.
game. That was a
I'm
solid
sure it might
one.
have all been thrown out.
That was definitely a solid one. I don't think I have any floppy disks anymore. I mean, I know I still have my CDs, but I don't know. I don't know. I know I still have all the old games like Atari and all that, but I can't recall a stash of floppy disks anywhere. So that era was gone on me. We didn't really have a computer for that era. We went from like an Atari computer to like a Windows 95 PC though, so we kind of missed that era. So
See,
anyway,
my folks had a computer that was not Windows, which was kind of wild now thinking back on it. It was a operating system that tried to compete against Windows. And I remember where in the world is Carmen San Diego, where to actually access the game, their anti-piracy key was it would ask you a trivia question that you had to answer by opening up the World Almanac that came with the game.
Yep, my mom's told me about that before because she had that same game.
Loved
We've-
it. Loved
we-
everything about it.
we've talked about that recently. God, what Amiga? There was a bunch of competing operating systems. So, yeah, the bunch of operating and that's crazy to think about. It took people forever to go to IBM compatibility. Like there was a time before everyone settled on a single OS. So.
Absolutely.
All
Well,
right.
they still haven't settled on a single OS.
Well,
But
yeah,
I
you
get
know
your
what I mean.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't
Yeah,
upset the macros out there.
but now compatibility is way different. Like, yeah, like way different.
Yeah, either you play games or you're on Linux.
That's it. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
You're either playing games or you're working.
Oh my god, that's exactly right. Oh. Alrighty. Well, I think anyone have anything they want to add to the StarCraft conversation before I kind of
This was about StarCraft. Shoot.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey,
Bonus episode, remember?
when good friends get together, this is what happens. So, yeah, I think that about sums up on StarCraft for me. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add? You know what I forgot to do, Rob?
What, Dave?
What did you think?
What? What did I think?
Yeah, of StarCraft. You've never played it before. You have played it now.
Oh,
What did you
yeah.
think?
Well, I don't have the rose-colored glasses, and I played a couple hours of it, I believe. It was an enjoyable game, although I do have to laugh because you made a comment about the horrible pathfinding, and in like the second level when you get the warden dude, I mistakenly put a spider mine down on a ramp, and he proceeded to spin between the ramp corner and that spider mine for the entirety of the level.
Yep.
So yeah,
Because he got trapped.
the pathfinding is horrible, and
Yeah.
other than that though, I had a great time. It's a damn good game even by today's standards.
You should go back because I'm pretty sure it recommends that you play the other campaigns first, but you don't have to. You should try like one of each to play the other, like because the Terrans are like the most basic of the three. And I'm not trying to offend because I was a Terran guy, but I really think strategy wise, like the way you have to build Zerg and Protoss is a little more interesting, because they're attached to like the creep and the pylon stuff like that. You should go back and
Yeah.
like play them. They're kind
Not
of
to mention just like the speed of the different races. Like
yeah, the
the
Zerg.
Protoss are slow to get rolling, and the Zerg are you gotta
Yes.
be quick.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can hit the Zerg's command base, I can't remember what it's called right now, and literally queue up every larva next to it as the same unit with one
Yep.
click of a button.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Which is one
for
of their
sure.
things, right?
Which is exactly their thing. That was exactly
Whereas
their
with the
thing.
Protoss, you could go around and have one probe, boop, 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 start up 5 pylons or 10
Yep.
turrets because they didn't have to stay there and be locked to the building they were building.
Yep.
Which was something I just remembered through the course of this conversation that was fascinating about the Protoss.
Well, we've covered a lot of topics today. We talked about the fact that this was built within a very nostalgic time period. I talked about some of the other games that came out in here. They're all games we've done episodes on, like Dune 2, Command and Conquer, Lemmings came up in today's conversation. And each of these games have their own super fascinating stories that I would really encourage you to go and check out. Of course, if you want to go check out old episodes of our podcast, episodes that, if you enjoyed our guest today, like Adam or Keefer, did not forget your name, was getting to it, promise. Um, Keefer has been on three, not two, like I said in the beginning. He's been on this is his third episode, two other episodes, and this is Adam's second time joining us. Of course, you can check out the old episodes with them in it on our website at www.memorycardlane.com. And Rob, what else can people find on our website?
Well, Dave, a calendar of both present, future, and past episodes can be found on there.
That's
I don't
not
know why I
even a
had to
joke,
mention
is
present.
it? That's not even a joke. I literally plan out an entire year, and they can see every episode from now till through December on our website. True statement. Carry
That is
on.
a very true statement. There's a bio of Dave and something about Rob that doesn't really say anything important.
True statement.
Uh, there's links to our social medias and our Discord where you can come hang out with us. Social media for Dave.
I can be found on various platforms as David is wrong. Did you ever get around to building your new one?
I'm still rebranding. I got the name down, but there's still other aspects of it we gotta lock down. So I'm trying not to get it out there and have someone steal my trademarks like the Washington football team. If you remember that whole scandal.
Okay.
Big money gonna be coming up in this one. Let's just say that.
Okay. So that's my social media, your social media. Adam's social media is I have kids at ihavekids.com. I remember that specifically about the last time it was on. Keeper, are you on social media these days? What are you doing online these days? Anything?
You can find me on Twitter and Twitch at Lionlyre, Lionlyre. I can't really say I do a whole lot, but I do occasionally throw out a stream or two.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, this is about that time. Each week, we try to tell you the story about one topic relevant to the current week in gaming history. This week, we told you the story of StarCraft, originally released for Windows PCs in 1998. As part of our commitment to our listeners, we love teaching you week in, week out. It's very fulfilling being able to tell you gaming history each week. As part of our commitment, our recognition of the process, when you teach, you learn. So every week we learn something, and we like to go around roundtable and talk about our big takeaways. So I will start with on my list. Adam, you're on the bottom of the list. Sorry, you were the last to join. What did you learn today? Did you learn anything? That's okay. You can say no. I'm omnipotent. I knew absolutely everything. It's okay. I forgive
No,
you.
I thought it was really fascinating, Keefer's project to develop AI for StarCraft. Just the challenges that he faced, and that pathfinding turned out to be one of the trickiest problems to solve, because yes, pathfinding is trash in StarCraft.
It's the
Mm-hmm.
worst. Yeah, it's the worst. Kiefer, what did you learn today?
You mentioned that they asked for the 2-month period to basically gut and rebuild the entire game, and that's super interesting to me because nowadays, if they wanted to gut and rebuild a game, it would take at least 2 years.
Yeah, true
Mm-hmm.
statement. Yep. Yeah,
That's really not something that happens anymore.
yeah, it's so true. And this is like it was the third technically there's three iterations of StarCraft through the development process, and it was the third one that stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And like they got over a year into development and just realized that they just didn't have the tool. Like I think about that, right? Because like burrowing and what else interacts with the ground? The creep. Like these were things they couldn't figure out how to make it work with the Warcraft engine because those mechanics don't exist at all.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob was like, "Yep, they gotta go. Give me a few months." And what did the team do for that 2 months? Like they all just because he did it. He built the engine by himself in 2 months.
Oh wow.
Weird.
So
Yeah.
that's a very, I agree with you, very fascinating thing. um Rob, what did you learn today, brother?
I think that my favorite takeaway from the whole episode would have to be that Blizzard was formerly Ogre Studios.
For like a day. For like a day.
Hey, they were still Ogre Studios, and they could have told everyone to get out of their swamp, but instead they chose to bring us all into the snowstorm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny to me how that name, they're like, yeah, let's just flip through the dictionary, find the first word that's we can legally take. Oh, Blizzard? Cool, we're done. So
Blows my mind that they got through all the A's without being able to find a legally kosher word.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Probably figured there were already too many A companies like Atari and
Yep.
Activision.
Yep.
I'd have bought a game from Anteater Studios.
That's right.
Oh yeah, that's
exactly
a good one.
right.
Hey, better start it. Get it now.
Yeah, that's it. Let's see. I think for me, I'm gonna echo Keeper because the evolution of StarCraft was unfamiliar to me. I really enjoyed as I was doing the research, kind of getting to learn. And if you get a moment after I post the show notes, take a look at the evolution of the art because it really does look like Warcraft in the beginning and not here in the end. And it's really fascinating how they got from point A to point B. So I really enjoyed learning about the evolution of it. So yeah, so that's that, and that'll about wrap it up for today.
Quick question.
Yeah, hit me with it.
When's this episode going live?
Thursday.
So the 30th?
Yes.
You're posting it a day early. The 31st would be the 25th anniversary.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is the 25th anniversary. Yeah, isn't that crazy? It's absolutely crazy.
That'll make us all feel old.
Yeah, shut up. I try not to. try not to do everything. So yeah, 100%. I wonder if they'll do it. I mean, they're not doing anything for 20th. They we had just gotten remastered for the 20th, and they did a StarCraft Global League with remastered, like Blizzard did one specifically that lasted 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. They shut it down, I think, in 2020. And now only the Korean leagues are what's left. So yeah, 25 years. Crazy to think about. Been a good lot. A lot's happened in 25 years. So all right, well, this is final words. I just want to start because I never have anything interesting to say by saying thank you to Adam and Keefer once again. I really enjoy having you both on, so thank you for joining us. So
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me too.
Yeah, anytime.
It's always a fun time.
Keefer, you have anything else you want to add?
Not really, just that I always enjoy my time on here with you guys.
I'm good
It's
with
always
that.
fun.
Adam, anything you'd like to add? Any final words?
Anyone got any last StarCraft unit quotes?
Oh, we never even got into this stuff because my only one I can never remember is you must construct additional pylons. So
what about I'm about to drop the hammer?
There's a lot of good ones.
And dispense some indiscriminate justice.
Indiscriminate justice. That's right.
Yeah. I always liked the research facility scream because it shows up in so much media.
It's so true. That is so true. I will tell you, for whatever reason, though, I mean, other than pylons getting stuck in my head, the sayings from this aren't stuck in my head as much as Warcraft. No, we're not talking about Warcraft, but all the I don't know if either of you played Warcraft.
I played 3.
You played 3, so they kind of had it in there with the grunts and the dumb humans and the ogres and the stuff like orcs rather.
Mm-hmm.
Those stick in my head more from this time period. So, Adam, did you play the Warcraft games?
A bit. I was way more into StarCraft.
Yeah, I think once it came out, I think most of us were way into StarCraft. So, all right, Rob, anything you'd like to add to today's episode?
Well, Dave, as always, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you to everyone for listening. It means the world to us, and we hope we bring a little joy and knowledge to your life. And also, I also want to take another second to thank both Keefer and Adam for joining us. It's wonderful having you guys both here, and it's great getting to see both Dave and I's best friends connecting and so similar. It's kind of eerie.
Dorks. Gosh. My goodness.
Ugh.
What are the odds of you both just go PS5? We're about to play Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah. Just weird goes to show you how similar Dave and I are, even if we try to deny it every day, because we find joy in the same people.
True statement. All right.
I like that. That's a good end note.
I that is a good end. On to next week. So next week we're gonna take a look at video games developed by PETA. And no, that's not some abbreviation for a video game studio you don't know of. I'm literally talking about PETA as in the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. As part of their marketing efforts, PETA has a long history of satirizing popular video games in support of their cause. And next week, we're going to take a look at the whole lot of them. So stick around next week as they force us to consider veganism as we take another trip down memory card lane. Do the thing.
Skibidi bop 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 boo doo.